Tonight, late-stage tariff talks.
It's about surviving the damage being inflicted by Donald Trump.
A ticking clock to get a deal before new tariffs come into effect. Plus, mediating a solution.
This is not just about wages. This is about the support and the crisis that this sector's in.
After more than 3 months of job action, Community Living London workers nearing a resolution. And a home for all.
It's really going to create a space where people of different ages and abilities and backgrounds can come together and be at home.
The new look facility in Lucan, transforming the idea of supportive living.
CTV News with Carlyle Fiset.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight in Washington and the latest on last-minute trade negotiations. The Prime Minister spoke with President Donald Trump today, but at this point, there's no deal, meaning broad 50% U.S. tariffs would go into effect just after midnight tonight. With more, here's Mike LeCouture.
Yesterday, there was a lot of action when you consider there was an hour and 45-minute meeting between both sides of negotiators that included U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. But today, it's been extremely quiet outside the offices of U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. While Canada is looking to get sectoral tariffs removed on steel, aluminum, and lumber, the tariffs on autos seem to be one of the most significant roadblocks to these negotiations. Right now, it's a 25% tariff on all non-American parts in those cars that are going into the United States. Sources are telling CTV News that while the Canadians want that number to go down to 10%, one American source says they might be willing to settle on 12.5%. Also new today, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce published a statement advocating for an end to this trade dispute. In it, the chamber encourages the two sides to continue talking with the goal of making a deal, saying, quote, the introduction of higher tariffs would damage both economies, drive up the cost for U.S. families, further disrupt critical supply chains, and risk the 13 million American jobs that depend on trade under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Some of the people who were around that table for that negotiation say it's getting difficult to see how we can come to a deal because of how dug in the Americans are on sectoral tariffs.
It's not so much about getting a win for Canada, it's about surviving the damage being inflicted by Donald Trump and limiting the damage. We've got to ride out the next 2.5 years of this president. We're never going to get to a great place on trade with this president. He likes his tariffs, so the goal is limiting damage.
Just how much damage Canada can limit remains to be seen as the clock continues to tick towards that midnight deadline. Mike LeCouture, CTV News, Washington.
And those tariffs would have varying impacts from province to province, with Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia hit the hardest. With more on the stakes for our province, here's Siobhan Morris.
With the route back to trade harmony, away from punishing tariffs unclear, the Premier's been trying to convey calm.
Ontario will be prepared for any and every scenario.
But this economist emphasizes the stakes couldn't be higher, with the possibility of a 50% tariff now hours away.
There's the immediate consequences of not reaching a deal, which is going to be several sectors in Ontario that are going to be heavily hit, steel and autos. And then there's the long-term consequences of a deteriorating relationship with the United States.
Canadian negotiators are said to be mulling over reduced tariffs on the auto sector. But Treffler explains in a business with slim profit margins,
25% is beyond the pale. Even getting down to 15% is beyond the pale. And it's higher than what many other countries are facing.
Adding uncertainty to future production in the province. To secure that future, there's been talk of letting go of one of Doug Ford's points of leverage.
At a minimum, we're going to have to see the provinces allow U.S. liquor back on the shelves.
And maybe relaxing retaliatory tariffs. Those kinds of leaks about options are encouraging to at least one observer.
This is typically what you see before a deal emerges, and sometimes it's darkest before the dawn in these circumstances.
Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
A London mayoral candidate is calling out the city clerk for taking 3.5 months to notify her about a minor omission on her nomination form. As Daryl Newcomb reports, it was an oversight that could have jeopardized her whole campaign.
When the nomination period for the upcoming municipal election began May 1st, Kirsten Crows was the first to file paperwork to run for mayor. So 3.5 months later, Crows was shocked to receive an urgent email from the elections office that her candidacy was at risk.
Yesterday afternoon at about 4:37, I think is the timestamp, I got a message that said urgent.
The email warned, to have your nomination certified and your name appear on the ballot, you must attend the elections office to update your Form 1 no later than 2 p.m. Friday. It turns out Crows hadn't filled in one line on her nomination papers, and she needed to write City of London in the space. There are, in fact, 2 steps to getting a candidate's name on the ballot. First, the candidate has to come here to City Hall prior to Friday at 2 p.m. to file their nomination paperwork. Then the city clerk has until Monday at 4 p.m. to certify the nomination. The city clerk declined CTV's request for an interview, so it remains unclear why Michael Schultes took 109 days to review Crow's paperwork to certify her campaign. Crows canceled scheduled campaign events on Tuesday morning to immediately resolve the problem.
I was just really fortunate that I wasn't at AMO in Ottawa, where I would normally have been, because I don't think I would have been able to come all the way back from Ottawa to meet that deadline in 3 days.
The clerk's statement simply cites a clause in the Municipal Act requiring the certification process and adds, during this review, there could be issues encountered with identification or typographical errors on forms, and candidates are contacted in advance of the close of nominations to resolve issues. This is best practice to ensure compliance with the Act. But whether waiting until the last week to certify candidates is best practice, why staff didn't notice the omission back on May 1st, and if Crows is the only candidate to face a short deadline, remains unknown.
So I'm just wondering what the review period was. I'd love to know if any other candidates had also got emails like this.
Crows is one of 10 people registered as candidates for Mayor of London. The complete list is on the City of London website. Daryl Newcomb, CTV News.
Good evening, I'm meteorologist Gary Archibald for CTV News. We've seen a mixture of sun and cloud. We've seen some bright sky above, and now we're in the midst of 2 boundaries coming together and sweeping through the lower Great Lakes with some scattered showers. It's not a well-defined boundary, but through late night tonight into tomorrow morning, pre-dawn, I'm anticipating some showers, maybe even some embedded thunderstorm activity, but we did get into some fair weather, and temperatures are still mild for this time of day. Close to 25 degrees, partly cloudy, increasing cloudiness coming, showers for tomorrow morning's commute, potentially. I'll break down what you need to know in just moments.
Thanks very much, Gary. Union leaders say they're getting closer to resolving a labor dispute for striking Community Living London workers. They've been on the picket lines for more than 3 months, now resorting to mediation to get a deal done. With the latest, here's Jerry Dewan.
Striking OPSU 166 members left picket locations throughout the city to converge in front of the Ramada Inn at Wellington and Exeter Road. It's where a number of developmentally disabled people have been housed during the job action. The OPSU members insist their strike is primarily about those individuals.
These are the most vulnerable people in Ontario, and they need our government to do better.
The picket line had a more upbeat tone, with this being the first day private mediator Jerry Lee has become involved in the negotiations. If both sides approve, Lee could take on the role of conciliator, allowing him to put in place a binding agreement. But support worker Tamara Duggan worries the systemic shortcomings of community living services still won't be addressed once a deal is reached.
I think that we all strive to do the best we can with the little resources that we have, but this time was really about making sure that people are aware that those resources are dwindling.
Over the lunch hour, striking Community Living London members gathered at the OPSU headquarters on Dearness Drive. They were here for a barbecue and a solidarity rally.
What do we want? Fair wages! When do we want it? Now!
The The OPSU 166 bargaining team was greeted with cheers as they took a break from the talks to appear before members.
We're here until this deal gets done.
Local 166 President Lisa Fuster says recent contracts have seen the almost 660 members receive minimal pay increases.
We can demonstrate year after year we've taken zeros or 0.5s, nothing over 1% for sure.
She says a structure where they negotiate with Community Living London leadership and the actual funder is the Ontario government makes having productive talks a challenge. She also points to the ongoing affordability issues facing those with developmental disabilities, with many ending up on the streets. She says successive governments have failed to provide community supports after closing many mental health facilities.
This is not just about wages, this is about the support and the crisis that this sector's in.
Joining in this rally were staff from Ingersoll Support Services. The OPSU 172 members were locked out on May 23rd. Like the 166 members, they're still trying to get the 6.5% pay bump other public sector workers received after the Ford government's bill freezing public sector wages was overturned by the courts.
I don't feel like we should have to fight this hard for something that was owed to us and taken from us.
The 172 negotiating team will be meeting with the arbitrator on Wednesday. Jerry DeWan, CTV News.
Provincial government officials say there will be no more campsites removed from Pinery Provincial Park. A local camping advocate had spearheaded a campaign after learning 91 campsites had been removed from the park in the spring. A 45-day period allowing for public feedback on park management ended yesterday. In a statement, Ontario Parks officials say only 52 sites were removed last year from an ecologically sensitive area. They also say no further campsite reductions are planned and work is underway to relocate a portion of the impacted sites to other development zones within the park. Residents near Port Elgin are coming forward demanding their local councillors block a potential energy storage project. As Scott Miller reports, they're hoping municipal leaders follow the same decision made in Huron County just last week.
To meet Ontario's growing desire for more energy, 29 acres of farmland near Port Elgin could soon become home to one of Ontario's largest battery storage projects.
I am worried that it's going to happen, truly. This is where my family grew up.
Neon Canada would like to build an energy storage complex along a hydro corridor just south of Port Elgin. It would encompass 344 lithium iron phosphate batteries and 89 transformers to take power off the grid at times of low energy demand and return it to the grid when energy demand is high.
This is not the place for it. There's all kinds of places that this thing can be located. Away from people, away from livestock, away from wildlife.
The loss of farmland concerns others.
Every day in Ontario, 320 acres of farmland is lost to development. My husband and I are farmers, and we've farmed this land with our children, and I can't imagine not being able to farm it anymore and pass it on to future generations.
Schwa says she's concerned about what would happen if the batteries caught fire.
They claim that that will never happen. I would like to see the guarantees to prove that that is not going to happen in a 20-year span.
If a fire did occur and it did get into the other units, you can't put these things out. You got to let them burn out.
Neon initially planned to build the battery storage complex near Tara, but moved their preferred site to Saugeen Shores following consultation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, who would be 50% partners in the proposed project, which still does require municipal approval in order to move forward.
I got the feeling that they're really, really trying with everything they have to push this through, and I hope I'm wrong and this doesn't happen.
I cannot believe the number of people that have stopped in here with concerns.
If they do get municipal approval, construction on the Neon battery project could begin as early as next year and be completed by 2028. Near Port Elgin, Scott Miller, CTV News.
Lambton OPP say they're investigating stolen copper wire worth $1 million. They shared this image saying the thieves stole several spools from a business in St. Clair Township this past weekend. Police say they're looking for a 2007 white Intergenerational heavy truck that was stolen from Sarnia earlier this month. They're also specifically asking scrap metal dealers to contact police if they are approached. Lambton public health officials say mosquitoes found in a trap in Petrolia have tested positive for West Nile virus. They say these are the county's first West Nile cases of the year, and none have been found in humans. Public health officials recommend using DEET-based bug spray and removing standing water to reduce the chance of spread. A former community home in Lucan that closed suddenly last year has reopened. It's now under private ownership and has a new mission. And with more on that, here's Rita Ismail.
This may look like a new retirement home, but inside, people from their 20s to seniors in their 90s will soon call the same place home.
It's an intergenerational model of home for people who have an intellectual disability, developmental disability, autism, any type of neurodiversity, also seniors retirement and dementia care. All of that in the one home.
The building is not new to the community. It was formerly home to Jake's House, a residence for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities that closed abruptly last year. Highview later assumed control of the property and has transformed it into an intergenerational home with 53 suites.
It's really going to create a space where people of different ages and abilities and backgrounds can come together and be at home and share time and meals and experiences, and I think it's going to be lovely.
Highview says support will be tailored to each resident rather than expecting everyone to follow the same routine.
What you might need for support for your independence is different than what I might need for my support. And so we are going to work with every single person and co-design what support or what care looks like for them.
Highview says it believes this is the first private intergenerational home of its kind in Canada. The model was shaped in part by families of adults with developmental disabilities who want their children to have a home of their own with friends, independence, and the right level of support. And Highview hopes the concept can eventually grow beyond Lucan.
As the future unfolds, we'll be able to create villages, not just here in Lucan, but in other communities where similar populations can come together to share in each other's lives, which is the important thing.
Residents are expected to move into Highview homes next month. Rita Ismail, CTV News.
As many as 16,000 students in Grey County could be without a ride to school when classes get back underway next month. With more on the unresolved dispute with bus drivers and the provincial government's role, here's Rob Cooper.
Thousands of young students in Grey Bruce may not have a school bus available to get them to and from school come September, and parents are fearing the worst.
It makes it harder for everybody. Like finding childcare and getting him to school on time and everything like that. It's a pain.
You're hoping for the best.
Absolutely.
The 6 school bus companies that transport students to and from schools in the region are without a contract with the province, and that could force parents to find their own way to get their young ones to class.
We're calling on the province to get back to the negotiating table.
The executive director of School Bus Ontario says the province originally offered a 0% pay increase for 1 year. That was followed by a second offer that was turned down.
The offer was a take it or leave it offer. The operators felt it didn't cover their costs, so here we are at an impasse.
An impasse with just weeks to go before school resumes. School Bus Ontario says operating costs have gone up by 71%, and they need a substantial pay increase to cover those expenses. It says if a new contract is not reached by Friday, buses will not be on the road for the first day of school. The previous contract expired in June.
It's a stress for a lot of parents, for sure. I don't know how people will manage to get their kids to school if they don't get it sorted out before school starts.
The Blue Water District School Board says in a statement that it remains hopeful it will reach a fair agreement with school bus operators. Talks are ongoing between all parties and have continued this week, and we believe there is a path to secure reliable transportation for this school year at the negotiating table. It goes on to say it sent out notice yesterday because it wanted to be transparent with families about the risk that bus service may not be available for all students at the start of the school year. We recognize and understand the challenges this presents.
This is going to be substantial for families having to drive to and from school every day, maybe twice a day, find carpools. All of these things are going to be disrupted, not to mention field trips and sports and whatnot.
So about 16,000 students on some 308 bus routes could be affected if a deal isn't reached by the first day of school. Parents are being encouraged to make alternate plans just in case. Rob Cooper, CTV News, Meaford.
Still ahead, financial stress for Canadian students, the cost of living impact for young people pursuing higher education. Plus, a meeting of the mayors. Ontario's big city leaders gather in Ottawa with Washington on their mind.
Download the CTV News app and stay on top of local stories as they unfold.
We begin tonight with Ontario's latest.
Customize your feed and watch live wherever you are. CTVLondon.ca, your home for news.
Welcome back. Ontario's big city mayors are meeting in Ottawa right now, discussing their municipal priorities, but also watching the trade negotiations in Washington closely. With more on their perspective, here's Judy Trin.
In big conference rooms and small breakout groups, the threat of new sweeping U.S. tariffs generates anxiety. It also steals resolve.
And I think we have to stand and show a strong face as we negotiate this trade deal.
The mayor of Niagara-on-the-Lake says his municipality will take a hit from the new 50% tariffs, which are set to come into effect. 20% of the region's wine are sold to Americans. But Gary Zalepa says the region has learned to adapt.
We're seeing great resilience in our tourism sector, our agricultural sector as well. We've had more investments by local companies.
The mayor of Sudbury says Canada should not give the U.S. first dibs on access to Northern Ontario's critical minerals to secure a trade deal, when there's demand from other nations that play by the rules.
Having tariffs brought on, or the threat of tariffs brought on, will not change some of the supply chains that have already been established. So I think it's a threat that is being brought in to try to negotiate other concessions by the government. But I don't think it's necessary that we use this as a lever at this time.
Municipal leaders want more interprovincial trade barriers knocked down faster, so energy and goods can flow east to west. In the border city of Sarnia, there's support for the Prime Minister to fight back against the U.S. and even walk away if necessary.
I respect the Prime Minister. I understand his game plan. I understand his strategy. But you're not dealing, in many cases, with reasonable people. And as Canadians, we're reasonable. So if these talks fail, it will be very painful for Canadians. There's no question. But I'd rather have the pain and emerge to a better day where we're more sovereign as a country and more independent.
Even as they urge the Prime Minister to continue putting his elbows up, the mayors at this conference acknowledge that hard-hit businesses will require financial support from the federal government if this trade war is prolonged. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
New research is shedding light on the financial pressure facing Canadian post-secondary students. As Paul Hollingsworth reports, between tuition, food, and shelter, some students find themselves overwhelmed.
This campus will soon be jam-packed with students who are balancing their demanding academic calendars with managing financial stress.
Terrible. It's not fun.
Trying to make ends meet can be difficult.
Rent, food.
The high cost of tuition, books, food, and housing is making life overwhelming for many students.
That's how it's going for the next, however long we have in our lives.
A new study shows 76% of post-secondary students say financial stress is negatively impacting their well-being and academic performance. 20% are more stressed about money than school. 23% don't know how to build and maintain a budget.
I think it's the worst that we've seen in quite a while.
There are steps being taken to help. The St. Mary's University Students Association is offering free groceries for anyone who needs assistance.
All of that is a lot of strain on their mental health, and then they have to worry about the 5 courses that they're taking.
Financial planner Daryl Smith says more young people are coming to him to learn basic steps to manage cash flow savings at a time when costs are rising.
It starts with a budget, and if kids are going out to be adults on their own at a young age, they have to kind of create the budget.
The survey also showed 89% of students hope to learn about investing. Many of the students we spoke with said even though they don't have money yet, they hope to learn how to manage money and plan for the future as they continue university. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
A sellout crowd expected at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto tonight when the city's WNBA team hosts one of the league's biggest stars. However, as Heather Wright reports, the visitors are also bringing with them some off-the-court controversy.
Well, one of the biggest games in Toronto Tempo history taking place here at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, with the Tempo hosting the Indiana Fever and superstar Caitlin Clark. This is the first time she will play here in Canada, and you can see there is already a huge crowd forming, with a sold-out crowd of roughly 20,000 people expected to watch tonight's game. And that speaks in part to the popularity of Caitlin Clark, who is in the midst of another dominant season as the Fever look to lock up a playoff spot with a month still to go in the regular season. But despite all the excitement on the court, there has been a lot of focus on comments made by Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, who said biological men should not compete in girls' and women's sports. I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in a sport who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Now, these comments have sparked both praise and a lot of criticism. Here's what one sport management professor told us this afternoon.
There isn't a huge number of trans women just in general. Like, this is not a large population, and then there's not even less that are competing in sports. And so it is this, like, they are sort of fabricating, I think, this discourse to get people riled up around an issue that doesn't exist.
Now, many have said those comments undermine the growing popularity of women's professional sport, and people here tonight looking for a good game on the hardwood as the Toronto Tempo look to snap a 10-game losing streak. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Gary Archibald with me tonight. Gary, how is the weather story shaping up tonight?
Carlyle, I think some good and bad news in store. Today was salvaged because we got into a bit of this drier air ahead of this front. Mixture of sun and cloud, relatively speaking, a normal day in terms of daytime temperatures, averages, except for the low. It was a bit on the cooler side by about 2 to 4 degrees across parts of southern Ontario. Reached a high of 27 within the city limits. Some areas closer to 25, holding at 24. Mixture of sun and cloud, increasing cloudiness as I speak. You'll note that it's not a very humid day, so 25 right now at the airport feels like 28. Again, agreeable for the most part. A rather civilized day. We're not sweltering, as you can see, but there's a lot of disorganization along two boundaries, essentially a trough and a cold front coming together and sweeping from west to east across southern Ontario. Over the next 6 to 8 hours, increasing cloudiness towards midnight. That's when we could see, I think, a bit of shower activity, but by 2 to 3 a.m. we could be into a sweep of not just showers, but some thunderstorms embedded with the passage of this storm front. The rainfall tallies have fluctuated. Some of the computer models have suggested that Sarnia is going to get hit the hardest today and into tomorrow morning. Now, the latest model seems to tend to slide a little bit further to the southwest, and that means for Point Pelee, Leamington, that's where we're going to see more shower activity. Also for Tobermory, the Bruce Peninsula, Wyerton, Owen Sound, Southampton, our friends anywhere along the Georgian Bay shores and the northeastern shores of Lake Huron could see significant rainfall again post-midnight and pre-dawn. Breakdown for tonight, still relatively speaking pleasant in terms of temperatures, but the showers could begin. About a 40% chance of an occurrence beginning at around 10 o'clock. I think the heavier bands, if they do come post-midnight, somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., when most of us are tucked away for a good night's rest, hopefully. But you could be woken up by that thunder. Tomorrow, high of 23. Now we're below seasonal, cooler air in place. Drier, though, as we look ahead, and a bit of a rebound in terms of temperatures for Thursday and Friday. Sunny both days, high UV. Do protect yourself. Use that sunblock and wear your sunglasses. Weekends wet. It's cloudy Saturday through to Tuesday next week, and cooler, with highs in that low 22 to 23 range and lows 12 to 13 degrees Celsius. For the Midwest, a similar looking forecast tomorrow. Early in the morning, showers, thunderstorms, a risk of some of that rain, heavier along the eastern shores of Lake Huron. Nice break Thursday, Friday, temperatures mid to upper 20s, and then cooling off. Even sub 20 degrees Celsius temperatures projected 5 days from now. Rainy for the weekend, cloudy still for Monday and even Tuesday, and cooler. The summer is certainly indicating that it's winding down a bit. Let's look at your weather. Carlyle?
Thanks very much, Gary. Coming up, porous pavement. Details on an Eastern Ontario pilot project meant to reduce flooding. And later on, it's Behind the Likes with Lauren Stallone. Lauren, what are we talking about this week?
Well, to give you a little bit of a preview, do you think that I'm chic?
Well, I have questions about whether I even know what that word means. So I guess we're going to get into that a little bit later on. Stay with us.
I need an investigator's badge because we are keeping our eyes on this situation, the Talbot Street Bridge. It has been 21 days since it's last been hit.
And we know that because we have a whiteboard in the studio. We'll keep you updated every morning just after 9 o'clock.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. The fan favorite production, Beetlejuice the Musical, is set to take over the Siskins the Law Firm stage at Candlelight Place from September 11th to 13th. Enter now at ctvlondon.ca for your chance to win a 4-pack of floor tickets to see the show.
London has been ranked 5th among emerging North American tech markets. London sits behind Huntsville, Alabama, Halifax, Colorado Springs, and Dayton, Ohio. The annual rankings are compiled by the CBRE. The report indicates about 20,000 people work in tech in London, and the sector has grown by about 16% each of the last 3 years. CBRE officials say companies could use smaller markets like London to expand their geographical reach, increase cost efficiencies, and create new opportunities. The latest real estate figures show home sales rose slightly in July compared to June. According to the Canadian Real Estate Association, on a seasonally adjusted basis, activity was up 0.5%. However, compared to last year, sales were down 5.3%. Prices also fell on a year-over-year basis in Ontario specifically. A pilot project has launched in Ottawa, testing out a new kind of pavement meant to reduce the risk of flooding. With more on the material crews are laying down, here's Kimberly Fowler.
Intense flooding has hit Ottawa communities hard this summer, but a new way to pave could be on the way in Ottawa to help prevent it in the future. It's called permeable pavement. Here, you see a bucket of water quickly absorb into it at the EV charging stations at the Ottawa airport.
It absorbed 18 liters of water in 32 seconds through less than 1 square foot of surface area.
The pavement, made by Pure Pave Technology, an Ottawa-based company. CEO Taylor Davis says during a storm, the specialized pavement allows the ground to act like a sponge instead of relying on drains.
When you have a storm system that's essentially full during these rain events, that's when we're starting to see flooding. That's when we have nowhere for the water to go.
With the permeable pavement, that moves through it And then eventually it moves into the ground itself. That's where it gets absorbed. And the idea is to hopefully bypass the sewer systems altogether. The City of Ottawa is using the permeable pavement in a pilot project. Strips will be placed along Anna Avenue and Crown Crescent near Carlyle and Fisher.
The first of its kind in Canada.
While other permanent pavement systems exist, Pure Pave Technology says this one is unique as it's made to work in colder climates. Councillor Devine says permeable pavement is being adopted in New York City, but here it's a first in Canada.
I hope now that we scale up and we do a lot more of this, because Ottawa's vulnerable wards, including my own, are being hit time and time again. And frankly, we could never afford to increase the size of our sewer systems.
The pilot project launches in the fall. Kimberly Johnson, CTV News.
As trade talks appear to stall, North American stock markets dropped today. In Toronto, the TSX fell 300 points. In New York, the Dow down 116. The Nasdaq lost 355. The Canadian dollar is down 0.12 cents today. On commodity markets, gold lost $53 an ounce. Oil gained 32 cents a barrel. Later on CTV News, a massive social media lawsuit. American authorities taking Meta to court over claims the platforms are deliberately addictive.
It's Jeff KP and Backstage Ben in the morning.
Three awesome people that want to start your day or finish your overnight shift.
You'll laugh, you'll text, you'll call, you'll scratch your head and maybe even beat Backstage Ben. Weekday mornings from 5:30 to 10.
Listen live on the iHeartRadio app or at 97.5 Virgin Radio.
Lambton OPP say a motorcycle rider has died after a crash in Port Lambton earlier this month. They say it happened the night of August 8th, and a 57-year-old man was flown to London with life-threatening injuries. Police say he has since died, and no other vehicles were involved in the collision. The federal government's proposed ban on social media for kids under 16 could face a charter challenge. Canadian legal experts say the broad restrictions could infringe on freedom of expression and privacy rights, particularly for young people who rely on social media for information and community. A court in France recently struck down a similar ban because it was too broad. Federal government officials say their bill is designed to make online platforms safer for children while protecting freedom of expression. Meanwhile, a landmark social media case is underway in California, which could have substantial implications for what users see and do online. Dozens of American states are suing Meta, accusing the company officials of harming young people. With more on what's at stake and how the lawsuit could affect regulations in this country, here's Alex Carpa.
What were you talking about?
Jocelyn Lalonde has 3 kids, including 11-year-old Josephine. She doesn't let any of them use social media, saying she's concerned about the impacts it has on young people.
Social media in our home is not an option, but I think it's important, of course, to have media literacy and to talk about these things so we don't shy away from the conversations.
Her concerns echo the questions now being asked at the heart of the Meta trial in the United States. A bipartisan group of 29 U.S. states is suing Meta, accusing the company over claims Instagram and Facebook were designed in ways that harmed young users' mental health.
These are some pretty serious claims. Meta tried every sort of legal theory that it could to get the case dismissed before trial, and those were basically unavailing. So there's a great deal of peril for Meta.
Meta is expected to tell the jury that the company made efforts to keep kids safe online. Experts say this is the biggest legal test on social media's effects on young users.
This is the reckoning that opponents of social media have been waiting for years.
At the beginning of June, Ottawa introduced the Safe Social Media Act, which proposes a 16-year-old minimum age requirement for social media use. Manitoba was the first province to announce a possible full ban in April. Tech analyst Carmi Levy says the trial could reshape the entire social media landscape.
How the legal processes in cases that are currently in play in Canada will play out will largely depend on the precedent that's set in this American case.
Meta co-founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Instagram chief Adam Mosseri are expected to testify at a trial that is scheduled to last for 6 weeks. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Federal government officials are repealing their electric vehicle sales mandate. The mandate would have required electric vehicles make up 20% of new vehicle sales this year and 100% by 2035. Federal officials now say consultations on tougher emission standards for gas-powered vehicles will begin this fall, with draft regulations targeted for early 2027. Tomorrow on CTV News, concerns raised at the Blue Water Bridge. Multiple massive seizures of illegal nicotine products worth millions of dollars. Details tomorrow on CTV News at 6.
Let's take a look at our CTV News weather snapshot. Thanks to Carol White for this great image. Expect increasing cloudiness tonight with overnight showers and possible thunderstorm activity early Wednesday morning. Late afternoon does fare better into the early evening with some clearing overhead.
Ukrainian authorities say a Russian missile attack killed 10 people in the country's northeastern region. They say at least 18 others were injured. According to Ukraine's president, the strike hit a busy intersection near a post office and several stores surrounded by residential buildings. And he vows Ukraine will respond. United Nations officials say their human rights monitoring mission is gathering information on the attack and its impact on civilians. Last week, they stated civilian casualties from the war had risen by roughly 30% in July alone. President Donald Trump says there are currently no scheduled talks with Iran. He posted on social media today labeling the Strait of Hormuz a new U.S. territory. Trump claims the corridor is open, contradicting an earlier Iranian statement indicating the waterway is closed to shipping. A temporary ceasefire agreement expired yesterday, and oil prices rose higher today. A North Carolina weather camera recently captured a dramatic lightning strike. This is video from the city of Wilmington, the site of a Second World War battleship. The vessel had been restored and now serves as a memorial to more than 11,000 North Carolina natives who died during the fighting. The ship itself earned 15 battle stars, taking part in every major American naval offensive in the Pacific. Business owners in several Canadian industries are watching the negotiations in Washington closely, including alcohol and dairy producers, even honey. With more on how beekeepers are preparing, here's Alex Carpa.
So this will be mostly honey.
Chris Bartel is a third-generation honeybee farmer near Oakbank, Manitoba. He says the industry continues to face significant challenges.
It's definitely getting harder.
Bartel's family-run farm is in the middle of harvest, but there's a cloud lurking over this year's product. The U.S. is set to impose new 50% tariffs on several Canadian goods, including honey, starting on Wednesday.
If this 50% comes on, and it's not just a negotiation tactic and it comes on and it stays on, it could actually cause some farms to be lost. For the industry as a whole, I don't think it'd be a positive thing.
Canada produced over 84 million pounds of honey in 2025, according to Statistics Canada, which is an almost 4% volume increase from 2024. Data also shows that over half of the country's exports in that same year went to the United States.
My producers have said this is devastating. It could put the industry out of business.
The beekeepers sell their honey to Canadian packers, but some are now canceling contracts over fears the tariffs will mean less demand from the United States, which is the industry's biggest customer.
Canceling contracts means that beekeepers will not have a market for their honey, so they will have no revenue, basically, because the honey production is the main source of revenue for most beekeepers.
Some economists say the tariffs could force Canadian producers to look for new international markets, a process that could take time.
It might take 6 months to a year before beekeepers are able to find customers that are in Europe or Asia or Africa or South America. So it could be very devastating for the economy here as well as the rest of Canada.
The Beekeepers Federation is calling on the federal government for emergency support if this tariff threat becomes a reality. Alex Carpa, CTV News, near Oakbank, Manitoba.
And Lauren's back with me now. On the other side of the break, it's Behind the Likes. We're talking chic, Lauren, and I feel like I'm about to figure out what it actually is.
Well, we're going to take part in the kind of chic 2 trend.
I will explain. This is my picture. We'll explain what that means on the other side of the break. Stay with us. And before we we go tonight, it's Behind the Lights with Lauren Stallone. And Lauren, this week we're talking about what it means to be chic, but actually the trend is kind of subverting that here as well. So tell me a bit about the trend.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I feel like one of the themes that we've talked about so much in this segment is just the fact that there is such a deep desire for human connection on social media, and that trend continues to prove that. So people have been posting to the prompt, kind of chic too, about something that they feel passionately about or something that makes them them. These are our friends at Virgin Radio. And chic usually means being fashionable and trendy, having that almost mysterious energy about you, which, Carlyle, you got that going on, so you might just be chic.
I don't know about that.
But what this trend is basically doing is saying that being chic can also mean just being yourself and embracing what makes you you and your individuality, which I find to be super refreshing.
And we've got some examples, because as you pulled the newsroom to try and get a couple examples.
That's
this
right.
is yours, Lauren.
This is mine. So kind of chic to be sentimental, something not a lot of people know about me. I really like to scrapbook anytime I'm out, even if it's for a story, just finding little knickknacks that I can use and look back at major milestones in my life.
This one's mine. Kind of chic to support grassroots soccer. I've mentioned a couple times on broadcast how I'm a big soccer fan, and I'm a broadcaster, and I try to combine those. This photo was actually taken in St. Thomas, where I was doing play-by-play commentary for Railway City. They're an Ontario Premier League team. There's a team here in London as well, and that's been something I've been really passionate about, and it's a lot of fun. And you talk
really
about, I talk about like subverting the idea of chic as well, because that is grassroots soccer. Is you're there, it's bare bones broadcasting, it's you and a mic. I'm often standing with the parents. That's all it is.
I love that. It's so different than what you do here, too.
So much fun, yeah.
And then kind of chic to build muscle. This is our Rita. I give her a lot of props. I know our girl, she's been in the gym, and it's hard to find time to do that. So that is definitely chic, Rita. And kind of chic to attend Buffalo Bills practice at the new Highmark Stadium. Brent is a Bills fan. Carlyle, are you a Bills fan?
I wouldn't say. I'm a fantasy football guy.
Okay.
Kind of chic to do fantasy football? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Kind of chic to sit next to your hero, Scott Miller. That is Terry Fox. That's a statue in downtown Toronto. So something I did not know about Scott Miller. Really cool. And kind of chic to run the Rome Marathon are Nick Paparella. Nick, that is certainly chic. I could not do that.
I don't know that he entirely understood the assignment about that one, because, yeah, he was in Rome running a marathon. But that's, yeah, for Nick, that's chic.
Yeah, and there is this whole discourse about how running a marathon is more of a Gen Z ritual. But, hey, Nick is right there. Yeah, me neither.
All right, that's Behind the Lights with Lauren Stallone. Lauren, thanks so much. That's it for us. For all of us at CTV News London, we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good night.